Okay, what if you could actually travel back in time? I mean, not just read about history, but really feel it. Well, guess what? That's exactly what we're doing today. Think of this as your personal time machine. We're about to take an 800-year leap back into medieval India. We're talking magnificent temples, huge clashing armies, and, the birth of a whole new culture. So yeah, let's get right into it.
I mean, seriously, how many ever wished you could just be there? Like step right out of the textbook pages and see it all happen with your own eyes. Well, buckle up because that's what we're going to do. We're setting our time machine's dial way back to the 6th century CE, and we're hit and go. Our destination? A point in time where India was on the brink of a massive, massive transformation. All right, before we dive deep, there's one core idea that's going to help you make sense of everything. I want you to think of it as India's changing mosaic. It's simple, really. Imagine culture is this giant, beautiful piece of mosaic art. Now, when new people and new ideas show up, they don't just smash the old tiles. Nope, they add new tiles to the pattern. And what you get is something richer, more complex, and even more interesting. So keep that mosaic idea in your head, okay? All right, our time machine is landing. Thump, right in the middle of the 6th century. The dust settles, and what do we see? Well, the last huge empire that held everything together is gone. It's faded away. In its place, North India has kind of fractured into something totally new and, honestly, pretty exciting. So as we look around, we don't see one big single empire. Instead, it's this patchwork of powerful independent kingdoms, and they're mostly ruled by the Rajputs, these really fierce warrior clans famous for their whole code of honor and chivalry. Each one of these kingdoms is like its own unique, vibrant tile in that mosaic we talked about. Each has its own rulers, its own art, its own amazing buildings. And man, just look at the key players on the board here. You've got dynasties like the Gurjara-Pratiharas. They were basically a wall holding back early invasions. Then you have the Chandalas, and if you've ever seen pictures of the temples at Khajuraho, that was them. Absolutely stunning stuff. And of course the Chauhans, who held the super important city of Delhi. Every single one of these families was a regional powerhouse, all competing for fame and leaving behind this incredible legacy of art and writing. But and this is a really crucial point, for all of their individual strength and glory, there was a big problem, a critical weakness, really, a lack of unity. All this rivalry between the kingdoms, this inability to just, stand together, well, it created a weak spot, a vulnerability that was about to be put to the test in a major way. And yeah, right on cue, new forces start pushing in from the northwest. You can just imagine it. The mosaic of India is about to get some very different-looking tiles added to the mix. Now, there are two key figures leading these invasions, but you've got to understand they had totally different goals. First up, you've got Mahmud of Ghazni. The best way to think of him is like a raider or a storm. He swept into India 17 times with one single goal, to plunder wealth. He's the one who famously sacked the Somnath temple, grabbed a ton of treasure, and then left. But then you have Mohammad Ghori, and he was different. He wasn't just after the loot, he was an empire builder. His goal was to stay, to set up permanent rule. And believe me, that changes everything. And right here, this is the major turning point in our story. Ghori's ambition is what leads directly to the fall of those old Rajput kingdoms and the rise of something completely new, a centralized power that would rule from Delhi for the next 300+ years. So after Ghori defeats the really powerful Rajput king Prithviraj Chauhan, he doesn't just pack up and leave. Instead, he appoints his most trusted general, a guy named Qutubuddin Aibak, to be the governor of his new Indian territories. And when Ghori eventually dies, Aibak doesn't miss a beat. He takes control and declares himself the first Sultan of Delhi. And if you want a perfect symbol of this massive change, look no further than this. Aibak starts building a totally new kind of monument in Delhi, the Qutub Minar. I mean, this massive, towering minaret with its completely different style of architecture, it was like a giant sign. It was a powerful statement that basically shouted, "There's a new power in town, and we are here to stay." So, Aibak lays the foundation, right? But it's his successors who really build the empire. You have Iltutmish, who solidifies their power, fights off rivals, and get this, even repels a Mongol invasion led by Genghis Khan himself. Yeah, that Genghis Khan. And then, and this is amazing, comes his daughter, Razia Sultana. She becomes the first and only woman to ever rule the Delhi Sultanate. She was this incredible leader and military strategist who would literally lead her armies into battle, just an unbelievable figure for her time. Okay, so how do you even manage a huge, growing empire like this? Well, Iltutmish came up with a pretty clever administrative tool called the Ikta system. Here's how it worked. He basically divided the whole kingdom up into provinces, called Iktas. Then he give each Ikta to a trusted military commander to govern. It was a smart way to keep control centralized while still managing a massive amount of land. And, the Sultanate wasn't just one family that ruled forever. Power actually passed through 5 completely different dynasties over those 300 years. It started with Aibak's Slave Dynasty, then moved on to the powerful Khiljis, the super ambitious Tughlaqs, and so on. Each one of these dynasties left its own unique stamp on India's culture and government. So let's step back for a second. What was the lasting impact of this whole new era? I mean, how did these new rulers actually change the day-to-day fabric of life in India? This, my friends, is where our mosaic analogy really kicks into high gear. For starters, the sultans brought in a completely new way of running a government. They set up a central administration with different ministries, which, sounds a lot like how governments work today. The sultan himself was the ultimate boss, the head of the army, the top judge, the whole shebang. They brought in new tax systems, too. This was a massive new tile of centralized, Persian-inspired administration getting cemented right into the Indian mosaic. And it went way beyond just politics. You started seeing these new styles of art and architecture. The arches and domes you see on the Qutub Minar, popping up right alongside traditional Indian temples. The Persian language became the official language of the royal court, and it started to blend with local languages. This is the changing mosaic in action. It's a real fusion of cultures, creating something that had never existed before. But hang on a second. How in the world do we know all this stuff, right? How could we possibly piece together a story from 800 years ago with this much detail? Well, that's because historians are basically detectives, and they have a giant evidence board filled with all the clues that were left behind. And these clues aren't just dusty old books. They're basically our eyewitness accounts. We have the travel journal of a scholar named al-Biruni, who came with Mahmud of Ghazni and just wrote pages and pages about how fascinating Indian science and culture were. We have writings from court poets like Amir Khusro. They called him the Parrot of India, who described this new blended Hindu-Muslim world. We even have an autobiography written by a sultan himself. These are the precious clues that let us put the puzzle of the past back together. So when you look at the whole picture, from this land of rival kingdoms to a single powerful sultanate, it's clear the story of medieval India is an epic tale of transformation. That cultural mosaic we talked about, it was changed forever. It became richer, more complex, more layered. Which really makes you think, right? Of all those new tiles that were added, what do you think had the biggest impact? Was it the new government, the new architecture, or the way languages started to blend? Definitely something to chew on.